What happens when a quiet studio morning turns into a powder keg, when a single unexpected guest walks onto a daytime talk show and rewrites the script in real time? Live and censored and impossible to take back. Before we dive in, subscribe to my channel Neon Narration, hit that like button, and drop a comment right now because stories like this only get more intense the deeper we go. The lights of the studio hum softly, a familiar warmth washing over the pastel set of The View. The audience files in with the gentle buzz of expectation, that low murmur of chatter mixed with the rustle of coats and the squeak of seats folding down. It's supposed to be a normal taping. Another polite debate. Another headline skimmed, dissected, and neatly packaged before the commercial break. The hosts take their seats, smiles practiced, posture relaxed. Joy Behar adjusts her glasses, glancing down at her notes, already confident she knows how this segment will go. Off stage, though, something feels different. Producers whisper more urgently than usual. A stagehand jogs past with a headset half slipped off his ear. Someone mutters, "Is he really here?" And then the double doors open. Johnny Depp steps onto the set. There's a split second, just a heartbeat, where the room forgets how to breathe. The applause doesn't come immediately. It's delayed, stunned, as if the audience needs confirmation that their eyes aren't lying to them. Depp isn't in costume. No pirate swagger, no theatrical grin. He's dressed simply, dark jacket, slightly rumpled shirt, hair tied back with casual defiance. His face carries something heavier than charm. It carries history. The applause finally erupts, uneven and loud, mixed with gasps and murmurs. Johnny nods once, almost imperceptibly, acknowledging the crowd without feeding off them. He walks with measured steps, each one deliberate, like he knows exactly where he's going, and exactly what he's about to do. Joy's smile freezes for half a second too long. "Well," she says, voice bright but tight around the edges, "this is unexpected." Whoopi Goldberg turns toward Johnny, eyebrows lifting. "Johnny Depp, everyone," she announces, her tone neutral but curious, as if bracing for impact. Johnny takes his seat, folding his hands together, fingers interlaced. He doesn't look at Joy right away. Instead, he scans the audience, the cameras, the walls plastered with soft colors meant to keep things calm. The irony isn't lost on him. Calm is the last thing in the room now. Joy clears her throat. "So, Johnny," she begins, leaning back slightly, crossing one leg over the other. "You've been in the news quite a bit over the years. Some would say for reasons that have nothing to do with your acting." A few audience members shift uncomfortably. Johnny tilts his head, finally turning to face her. His eyes are steady. Too steady. "That's one way to put it," he says quietly. Joy smiles again, but this time there's a glint in her eyes. Another way might be accountability. The word hangs in the air, sharp and deliberate. A producer off-camera stiffens. Johnny exhales slowly through his nose. Inside, a familiar heat rises, anger mixed with exhaustion. He's heard this tone before. This assumption. This judgment dressed up as curiosity. He straightens in his chair. "Accountability is important," he replies, voice calm but edged with steel. "But so is accuracy." The audience murmurs. Whoopi glances between them, sensing the shift. Sunny Hostin leans forward slightly, intrigued. Joy taps her pen against her notes. "Well," Joy says, "accuracy depends on who you ask, doesn't it?" Johnny's jaw tightens, just a fraction. "It does," he agrees. "And for a long time, I didn't get to do much asking." There's a pause. The kind that stretches uncomfortably, that makes producers count seconds in their heads. Joy chuckles lightly, trying to reclaim control. "You know," she says, "people at home might wonder why you chose this show, this moment, to come speak." Johnny's lips curve into something that is not quite a smile. "Because this is where the conversation keeps happening," he says. "With or without me." A ripple of reaction spreads through the audience. Some nod. Others glance at each other, unsure. Joy raises an eyebrow. "And you think we're being unfair?" "I think," Johnny says slowly, choosing each word like a match near gasoline, "that I've been spoken about on this show more times than I've been spoken to." The room goes quiet. Joy's smile fades. "We talk about current events," she says defensively. "You're a public figure. And I'm a human being." Johnny shoots back, still controlled, but louder now. "With a name, a voice, and a side of the story that doesn't always fit into a soundbite." The audience breaks into scattered applause before quickly stopping, unsure if it's appropriate. Whoopi lifts a hand, signaling calm. "Let's slow down," Whoopi says. "We're all here to talk." Joy turns fully toward Johnny now. All right, she says. Let's talk. Do you feel this show has wronged you? Johnny doesn't answer immediately. He looks down at his hands, then back up at Joy. His eyes are darker now, the calm cracking just enough to reveal something raw underneath. I feel, he says, that jokes were made. Conclusions were drawn. And I wasn't invited to the table. Joy scoffs lightly. Oh, come on. We didn't invent anything. No, Johnny replies, voice suddenly sharper. You repeated it. A collective inhale sweeps through the studio. Joy's face flushes. We're allowed opinions, she snaps. So am I, Johnny says, leaning forward for the first time. And my opinion is that it's easy to be brutal when the person you're talking about isn't sitting 6 feet away. The words land hard. Joy opens her mouth, then closes it again, recalibrating. You're implying we were cruel, she says. Johnny doesn't blink. I'm saying it felt like being tried in absentia. Over coffee. The audience gasps softly. A few clap before catching themselves. The energy in the room is no longer playful. It's volatile. Joy laughs, but there's no humor in it. You know what? I think you're being overly sensitive. That's when it happens. Johnny leans back, tilting his head, a slow, incredulous smile spreading across his face. When he speaks, his voice is calm, almost gentle, but every word cuts. Joy, he says, I survived having my life dismantled in public. I buried my mother while headlines laughed. I watched my kids read things about their father that no child should ever have to see. If sensitivity is what you call refusing to swallow that quietly, then yes, guilty. The studio erupts, gasps, applause, shouts of "Oh my God." Someone in the audience stands up before being urged to sit back down. Joy's face drains of color. For the first time, she looks genuinely shaken. Whoopi steps in. Okay, she says firmly. Let's take a breath. But Johnny isn't finished. Years of restraint crack open, just enough. I came here, he continues, eyes locked on Joy, not to attack you, but to remind you, and anyone watching, that words have weight. Especially when you're sitting behind a desk millions trust. Joy swallows hard. That's not fair, she says, quieter now. Johnny nods once. Neither was what you said about me. But here we are. Live. Finally. Silence crashes down like a dropped glass. The camera cuts to the audience, faces lit with shock, sympathy, confusion. Social media phones glow secretly in laps, thumbs already flying. Somewhere in the control room, a producer whispers, "This is going viral." Johnny exhales, leaning back, the fire in his eyes cooling into something tired but resolute. Joy stares at her notes, suddenly unsure of the script she thought she controlled. And as the red light above the camera stays on, one truth becomes unavoidable. This isn't just an interview anymore. It's a reckoning. The silence doesn't last long, but it feels eternal. In that suspended moment, the kind that only exists on live television, every breath is amplified, every blink noticed. The audience senses it too. This isn't a segment anymore, it's a collision. The cameras keep rolling, red lights unblinking, hungry. Joy Behar shifts in her chair, fingers tightening around her pen as if it's the only solid thing left in the room. Her instinct, honed by decades of television, tells her to regain control, to redirect, to soften. But another instinct, pride, flares just as strong. Well, she says finally, forcing a laugh that echoes awkwardly. This has certainly taken a turn. Johnny doesn't smile this time. He sits very still, like someone who has said what they needed to say and is now bracing for the consequences. Whoopi leans forward, elbows on the table. Johnny, she says carefully, you're saying you felt attacked by things said here. Can you be specific? Johnny nods, appreciative of the shift in tone. I can, he replies. But I want to be clear. This isn't about one comment. It's about a pattern. Joy's eyes narrow. A pattern of what? Disagreement. A pattern of dismissal, Johnny answers, his voice steady. Of reducing a human being to a punchline. The audience murmurs again, louder this time. Someone whispers, he's right, not realizing their mic is closer than they think. Joy straightens. We critique public behavior, she says sharply. That's our job. Johnny turns fully toward her now. Then do your job with care, he says. Because when you speak, people listen. And when they listen, they decide who deserves empathy and who doesn't. Joy scoffs. So now we're responsible for how the world treats you. No, Johnny says calmly. But you are responsible for how you treat me. That lands harder than any raised voice could. For a moment, Joy looks genuinely conflicted. Her bravado flickers, replaced by something closer to defensiveness. You know, she says, I've been in this business a long time. I've been criticized, attacked, misunderstood. It comes with the territory. Johnny's eyes soften, not in surrender, but in recognition. Then you know how it feels, he says quietly, which makes it harder to understand why you do it to someone else. The studio audience breaks into applause, louder and more unified now. The sound rolls through the set like a wave, impossible to ignore. Joy raises a hand, trying to quiet them, but it only half works. Sunny Hostin finally jumps in. Johnny, she says, some people would argue that you had platforms. Lawyers. Media coverage. You weren't voiceless. Johnny nods slowly. I had noise around me, he replies. That's not the same as being heard. He pauses, glancing briefly at the camera, at the millions watching from couches, phones, break rooms. When narratives take over, he continues, truth becomes inconvenient. And anyone who doesn't fit the narrative becomes disposable. Joy exhales sharply. So what do you want from us? She asks. An apology? The question hangs, loaded. Johnny considers it. I want acknowledgement, he says. That word spoken casually can wound deeply. That certainty without full knowledge is dangerous. Joy laughs again, but this time there's an edge of bitterness. So we're supposed to tiptoe around every celebrity's feelings? Johnny's voice drops, firm and unmistakable. No, you're supposed to remember they're human. A hush falls. Even the crew seems frozen. Joy opens her mouth to respond, but Whoopi cuts in gently. Joy, she says, let him finish. Johnny nods gratefully. For a long time, he says, I stayed silent because I thought dignity meant endurance. I thought if I just kept my head down, the storm would pass. But storms don't pass when they're fed. Joy's fingers tap nervously on the table. You're painting yourself as a victim, she says. Johnny doesn't flinch. I was victimized, he replies. That doesn't mean I'm weak. It means I survived. The audience erupts again, some clapping, some standing. A producer's voice crackles in Whoopi's earpiece. We're losing control of the room. Joy's face tightens. You know what? She says, voice rising. I don't appreciate being lectured on my own show. Johnny leans back, eyes never leaving hers. And I didn't appreciate being judged on yours, he says evenly. The tension snaps like a wire pulled too tight. Joy throws her pen down on the table. This is unbelievable, she mutters. Johnny's expression hardens, not angry but resolute. What's unbelievable, he says, is that accountability is only demanded from certain people. Joy's head snaps up. Are you accusing me of hypocrisy? Johnny pauses, then answers with devastating simplicity. If the shoe fits. An audible gasp ripples through the audience. Someone laughs nervously. Whoopi closes her eyes for a brief second, already knowing this clip will live forever online. Joy shakes her head. You come in here, ambush us. I didn't ambush you. Johnny cuts in, voice firm now. I showed up. Joy points at him. You knew exactly what you were doing. Yes, Johnny says. I was telling the truth. Live. Where it couldn't be edited. That line hits like thunder. The room buzzes with energy, fear, excitement, disbelief. Twitter servers somewhere are already heating up. Hashtags are forming in real time. Joy leans back, crossing her arms. Fine, she says. You've made your point. Johnny tilts his head. Have I? He asks softly. She hesitates. I don't think so, Johnny continues. Because making a point isn't enough. Hearing it is what matters. Joy looks away, jaw clenched. Sunny tries to steer the ship back. Johnny, what would healing look like for you? She asks. Johnny thinks for a moment. It looks like conversations that don't start with assumptions, he says. It looks like media figures admitting they don't know everything. It looks like humility. Joy laughs bitterly. Humility, she repeats. From a movie star. Johnny meets her gaze. From anyone with a microphone. The audience goes silent again, stunned into stillness. Joy's voice is quieter now. You really think we owe you something? Johnny shakes his head slowly. No, he says. I think you owe yourselves honesty. Whoopi finally speaks, her voice firm, grounding. All right, she says. We need to take a break. The words are a lifeline thrown into chaos. As the theme music swells faintly and the camera pulls back, the audience buzzes with whispered arguments and shaken heads. Joy stares straight ahead, lips pressed thin. Johnny exhales, shoulders dropping slightly, as if the weight he's carried for years has shifted. Just a little. But everyone in that studio knows one thing for certain as the screen fades to commercial. This isn't over. Not even close. The commercial break feels less like a pause and more like the deep inhale before a scream. The studio lights dim slightly, but the tension doesn't. It thickens. Audience members lean toward each other, whispering urgently, eyes darting between Joy and Johnny like spectators at the edge of a cliff. Phones are already out despite staff warnings, screens glowing beneath jackets, recording history in shaky hands. Joy doesn't move during the break. She sits rigid, arms crossed, staring at a spot just beyond the cameras. Inside her chest, irritation wrestles with something far more uncomfortable, doubt. She tells herself she's been doing this longer than Johnny Depp has been famous. She tells herself she's earned the right to speak freely. But another voice, quieter and more persistent, keeps replaying his words. Words have weight. Johnny, meanwhile, stares down at the table. His hands tremble slightly now that the adrenaline is ebbing. He hadn't planned to say half of what came out. He hadn't planned to let the years spill like that. But once the door cracked open, the truth rushed through. Part of him wonders if he's gone too far. Another part knows there was no other way. Whoopi stands, adjusting her jacket, moving between them like a referee before the bell rings again. "We're going back live in 10, she says under her breath. "Let's all remember people are watching." Joy exhales sharply through her nose. Johnny nods once. 5 seconds. 4. 3. The red light snaps back on. "And we're back," Whoopi says smoothly, professional to the core. Before the break, things got intense. A nervous chuckle ripples through the audience. Whoopi turns to Johnny. "Johnny, you've clearly been holding a lot in. I want to give you space, but I also want this to be productive." Johnny looks up, meeting her eyes. "I appreciate that," he says. Joy shifts, uncrossing her arms, then crossing them again, restless. "Productive is good," she mutters. Johnny turns to her, slower now, more deliberate. "Joy," he says, "can I ask you something? Honestly." She hesitates, then nods. "Go ahead. Do you believe," he asks, "that it's possible to be wrong?" A murmur ripples through the room. Joy blinks, caught off guard. "Of course it's possible," she says defensively. "For anyone." Johnny nods. "Then why does it feel like certainty is the currency of this table?" The question lands softer than his earlier words, but somehow cuts deeper. Joy opens her mouth, then pauses. Her instinct is to fire back, to joke, to deflect. But the audience is watching closely now. Not cheering. Not booing. Waiting. "We give opinions," she says carefully. "That's what people tune in for." Johnny leans forward slightly. "Opinions can evolve," he says. "Or they can calcify." Joy's jaw tightens. "Are you saying mine are calcified?" "I'm saying," Johnny replies, "that when opinions stop listening, they stop being honest." The studio is silent enough to hear the faint whir of the cameras. Joy laughs softly, shaking her head. "You know, this is rich," she says. "You come in here after years of silence, and suddenly you're the authority on honesty." Johnny doesn't rise to it immediately. He breathes in, steadying himself. "Silence doesn't mean absence of thought," he says. "Sometimes it means survival." The word survival echoes. Sunny leans in again. "Johnny," she says, "do you think shows like this should stop discussing allegations altogether?" "No," Johnny replies. "I think they should discuss them responsibly, with curiosity instead of conclusions." Joy scoffs. "Curiosity doesn't get ratings." Johnny looks at her, something sad flickering across his face. "Neither does cruelty," he says quietly. "It just lasts longer." The audience reacts audibly to that, an uncomfortable mix of applause and uneasy shifting. Joy's voice rises. "You keep calling it cruelty," she snaps. "But what about the people who felt empowered by speaking out? What about them?" Johnny nods slowly. "They deserve to be heard," he says. "Just like anyone else. But hearing one voice doesn't require silencing another." Joy leans forward now, pointing slightly. "So now you're saying you were silenced?" Johnny meets her gaze without blinking. "I'm saying I was spoken over." The distinction hangs in the air, subtle but sharp. Joy shakes her head, exasperated. "This feels like revisionist history." Johnny's voice hardens. "It feels like lived experience. A collective. Oh, ripples through the audience before being hushed." Whoopi raises a hand. "Let's not turn this into a shouting match," she says. "Joy, do you regret anything you've said about Johnny in the past?" The question lands like a dropped plate. Joy freezes. For the first time since the segment began, she looks unsure. The studio holds its breath. "I regret," she says slowly, choosing each word. "If anything I said caused pain." It's careful. Diplomatic. almost apologetic, but not quite. Johnny nods, absorbing it. Pain isn't always the point, he says. But it's always the result. Joy bristles. That sounds like a speech, she snaps. Johnny shrugs slightly. It's a scar, he replies. The audience erupts again, louder than before. Some stand. Some clap. Some just stare, stunned. Joy throws her hands up. This is turning into theater, she says. Johnny smiles faintly, without humor. It always was, he says. You just didn't expect the subject to walk on stage. That does it. Joy pushes back in her chair slightly. You know what? She says, voice sharp. If you wanted sympathy, there are better places to get it. Johnny's expression shifts. Something dark flashes behind his eyes. When he speaks, his voice is low, controlled, and devastating. I didn't come here for sympathy, he says. I came here for truth. Sympathy fades. Truth lingers. The audience falls dead silent. Joy stares at him, mouth slightly open. For a split second, the mask slips. There's anger there, yes, but also something else. Recognition. Maybe even regret. Whoopi steps in quickly. All right, she says firmly. We're running out of time. Johnny leans back, nodding. I understand. Joy straightens, reclaiming her posture. I think we've heard enough, she says curtly. Johnny looks at her one last time. I don't, he says softly. The audience reacts with a sharp intake of breath, followed by scattered applause that quickly swells. Whoopi stands. Johnny Depp, everyone, she says, voice steady but eyes intense. The applause is thunderous now. Not polite. Not routine. It's charged, emotional, divided, but loud. Johnny rises, nodding once to the crowd. As he turns to leave, Joy speaks again, almost involuntarily. You don't get to control the narrative, she says. Johnny pauses at the edge of the set. He turns back slowly. No, he says. But I get to challenge it. And with that, he walks off stage. The applause continues, mixed with gasps and murmurs, as the camera lingers on Joy's face, tight, unreadable, shaken. Behind the scenes, producers are already shouting. Social media is exploding. Clips are being cut, captions written, sides chosen. And as the show moves awkwardly toward its closing moments, one thing is undeniable. Daytime television has just crossed a line it can never uncross. The moment Johnny disappears behind the curtain, the studio doesn't exhale, it fractures. Applause keeps rolling for a few seconds too long, then collapses into scattered claps, confused murmurs, and stunned silence. The kind of silence that feels loud. Joy Behar sits frozen, staring at the empty space where he stood just moments ago, her lips pressed together so tightly they almost disappear. The desk in front of her suddenly feels smaller. Exposed. Whoopi clears her throat, professionalism snapping back into place like armor. All right, she says, voice steady but strained. That was a conversation. No one laughs. The camera pans across the audience. Some faces are flushed with excitement, others tight with discomfort. A woman in the front row wipes her eyes. A man shakes his head slowly, as if trying to recalibrate reality. Several people clap again, unsure, almost apologetic. This wasn't how the morning was supposed to go. Joy finally moves, straightening her papers even though they're no longer relevant. We'll be right back, she says curtly. The red light goes dark, and all hell breaks loose. Behind the scenes, producers swarm like paramedics at a crash site. Voices overlap. Did we dump that? Too late, it's already clipped. Twitter's on fire. A monitor shows a live feed of social media. Hashtags multiplying in real time. Hashtag Johnny Depp Live. Hashtag The View Chaos. Hashtag Words Have Weight. Joy stands abruptly, pulling off her microphone. Unbelievable, she mutters, pacing. He hijacked the show. A producer hesitates. With respect, Joy, the audience didn't see it that way. She stops walking. What's that supposed to mean? It means, the producer says carefully, people are siding with him. Joy laughs sharply, but there's no humor in it. Of course they are, she snaps. They always do when someone plays wounded. Across the hallway, Johnny stands alone for a moment, leaning against a wall, eyes closed. The adrenaline finally drains from his body, leaving exhaustion in its wake. His publicist approaches cautiously. You okay? She asks. Johnny opens his eyes. I don't know, he says honestly. But I said what I needed to say. She glances at her phone, eyes widening. This is everywhere, she says. Clips are already at millions of views. Johnny exhales. Good, he says softly. Then maybe it was worth it. Back on set, The show limps toward its ending. The chemistry is gone. The script is meaningless. Joy barely speaks. When she does, it's clipped defensive. The audience applause at the end is polite, restrained, nothing like the charged reaction earlier. As the credits roll, everyone knows this episode won't be remembered for its closing remarks. It will be remembered for the rupture. Within minutes, news outlets pick up the story. Headlines clash and collide. Johnny Depp confronts Joy Behar live on air. Explosive exchange shakes the view. A reckoning on daytime TV. Commentators dissect every word, every pause, every facial twitch. Body language experts flood TikTok. Lawyers weigh in. Former guests subtweet. Clips of Johnny's lines loop endlessly. Words have weight. I was spoken over. Truth lingers. Each one becomes a rallying cry. Fans flood Johnny's social media with messages of support. Survivors, artists, people who felt misrepresented by loud voices and tidy narratives. They see themselves in him. Meanwhile, critics accuse him of manipulation, of grandstanding, of turning accountability into performance. And Joy Behar? She trends for all the wrong reasons. Some defend her fiercely, calling Johnny's appearance an ambush. Others replay her past comments side by side with his words, drawing lines she can't erase. Old clips resurface. Jokes once brushed off now feel heavier, sharper. By nightfall, Joy releases a short statement. Carefully worded. Measured. We welcome passionate dialogue on this show. While emotions ran high today, we remain committed to open conversation. The internet isn't satisfied. Johnny doesn't release a statement